I'm a 24-year-old female from the UK. Despite a few creepy instances as a child, there has only been one time in my adult life that I have truly felt primal fear. My apologies if it's a little long, but trust me, I am being as concise as possible and need to explain the surroundings a little bit first. I live in a village in the middle of the English countryside. To paint an accurate picture of its size, it has a population of around 4,000, but feels more like 1,000 due to its spread out nature and being surrounded on all sides by lots of fields, farms, and woods that eventually connects onto a pretty famous forest. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere, and because of this, has notoriously bad phone and internet connections. Having lived here all my life, I pretty much know the place like the back of my hand. I know where all the public footpaths through the woods and fields are, where they connect, which are shortcuts, where to cross deep streams, etc. I have gone on walks in this area throughout my childhood with my parents and alone as an adult. Nothing bad had ever happened. I felt safe here. This story takes place last summer in July after I moved back home from university and had yet to get a job and smoked a lot of weed. A habit my parents despised and which I tried to keep hidden from them by going for evening walks, which included multiple pre-rolled joints hidden away in my hoodie pocket. As usual, they both got home at 5 p.m. We had dinner but chatted for a while longer than usual as my mom had quite a hectic day and was telling me about it. Because of this, I ended up heading out for my walk an hour later than usual, around 7 p.m. But as it was summer, the sun was still shining, so honestly, I didn't really notice that it would start getting dark while I was still out. The woodland closest to my house is less than 5 minutes away and you enter through a gate into a farmer's field. You can see across the open area quite far until the first set of small woods obscures your view. That's where I was heading, as I knew this track takes under 2 hours and leads back onto the same path I was standing on now. More than enough time to smoke the 3 joints in my pocket and for the smell to leave my clothing, I thought. This entire area is very popular for dog walkers, so it's not unusual to see other people around while you're out, and this is a village where everybody says hello to everybody. I lit my first joint and started walking. I'm just in my own world for a while until I was less than 100 feet before the entrance to the woods. An elderly man was coming out of them throwing a ball for his collie dog. I finished my joint and stubbed it out. As I got closer, I recognized it was John, who lived on the road next to mine and knew my grandpa. We stopped and said hello as I pet his dog Max. While talking to him, I see another man come out of the woods. No dog, bright green jacket, very tall, and had a good 10 years on me age-wise. Me and John chat for another minute and say goodbye, and he warns me not to stay out here for too long as it will start getting dark soon. He was right. The sky was bright pink and orange. The sun was indeed beginning to set. I hadn't really noticed. I continued on down the path and towards the man. When we were nearly passing each other, I look up to make brief eye contact with him, smile, and say hello like everyone here does. Even if you don't recognize the person, it's just something you do here. My eyes instantly met his. He was already looking at me. His dark eyes locked on mine, and he wasn't smiling. I didn't know him at all, but I knew something was wrong. It was in his eyes. I swallowed my politeness and looked at the ground as we passed. I had lived in my university city the past couple years, so I knew a red flag when I saw one, and my country bumpkin manners evaporated. I quickened my pace a little and before entering the woods, slyly looked back. The guy was still walking in the same direction following John. I felt relieved, laughed, cursed the weed for making me feel paranoid while lighting up another joint, and I started walking into the woods. It takes about 30 minutes to follow the path through the woods to the end. The pathway exit opened into another field that led to another set of woods. The sky was now violet, the dimming light having been obscured to me by the trees. I was already smoking my last joint and was near the entrance to the second set of woods when I felt it. Fear. Complete, crippling, absolute fear worked its way like electricity through every layer of flesh. I'd never felt anything like it before or since, but I knew what it was. I whipped around. Standing at the exit of the first set of the woods was the man. I could still make out his green jacket in the fading light. He fucking doubled back, and very quickly too. I had looked back several times while in those trees and he hadn't been there. For a second I froze, and so did he. He knew I'd seen him. To sprint the distance between us would take him about 5 minutes. He was obviously in good shape. I threw the spliff and fucking bolted into the woods. The only way I could go, and I didn't dare look behind me. I sprinted for a couple minutes before taking a sharp left turn off the path into the trees. I was hoping to throw him off a bit, but I couldn't see a fucking thing. The light was already darkening and the trees made it 100 times worse, especially as I was now in the thick of them. Their branches catching on my clothes like fingers, whipping and scratching my bare legs so bad I bled. I ran and ran, my lungs protesting in pain, hating me for smoking so much while my heart was throwing itself against my ribcage trying to escape. I couldn't anymore. I threw myself on the ground behind a particularly thick trunk, my back against it, knees to my chest, hand thrown over my mouth to stifle my labored breathing, desperately trying to pump air into my lungs for the next sprint. I listened for the first time. A few seconds pass silently. Then I hear him. Heavy footfall snapping twigs behind me and about 20 feet to my left. I dare not look in case he sees me. I have my phone, but I know I have little chance of signal being where I was. And I knew he'd hear me talking or see the light from my phone. I'm not ashamed to say at this point I start to cry, the tears falling silently down my cheeks. "What the fuck?" I hear a deep voice exclaim. "Where are you? I know you're here, I saw you." I have to clasp both hands around my mouth to stop my scream escaping. I can hear him moving around. I panic and I find enough courage to slowly peek from behind the tree. He was about 10 feet behind me, less than 20 feet to the left with his back to me. I moved back and my eyes searched the area around me. I pick up a pretty heavy rock and I carefully check on him again. His back is still turned, but he's searching through the trees, hunched down lower to the ground now. I make a snap decision and with everything I had left, I threw the rock behind me and to the right. It clattered through the branches of the trees and made one hell of a noise. I watched him immediately bolt in its direction, laughing. He fucking laughed. I paused a little, hearing his footsteps get quieter until I thought I wouldn't be so visible to him if I moved and threw myself forward. I ran, trying to put as much distance between us as possible, but I was also aware that I was getting further and further away from my house. I knew there had to be a stream somewhere close. If I found this stream, I could follow it as it borders the land and ran parallel to some of the footpaths. I ran and ran until the trees finally cleared and I could just make out another field through them on the other side. I thank God and push myself a little bit further till I'm out of the trees and the ground disappears from below my feet and I go head over shoulders down this stream embankment. I crash into the water below, my open mouth and lungs filling with muddy water. As I splutter it out, I feel both relieved to have found the stream and terrified that he's heard me. My phone is now ruined. I slowly make my way downstream as quiet as possible, listening out for him the whole time as the stream borders the woods, looking up periodically just in case. After a while, maybe half an hour, I notice the trees begin to thin out and realize this is the edge of the woods where I would have been exiting and where the pathway connected to the original one I'd been on. If I ran, I could get home in less than 20 minutes. As quiet as I could, I dragged myself on my stomach back up the embankment army style, wanting to stay as low as possible. I peeked over the top. I could just make out the opening of the woods exit path about 50 feet away. I sat and scanned the forest line for a couple minutes, my eyes trying to make out any sort of movement despite it being now pitch black. Nothing. I couldn't hear anything either. I pushed myself up and sprinted as fast as I could across the field onto the pathway. I knew the gate I'd entered through was in the adjoining field. It really wasn't far. I was so happy. "You fucking bitch!" came a loud yell from across the field. I swear my legs nearly gave out then and there. He had been waiting for me. I turned my head and saw him full-on sprinting out of the woods. I screamed and pushed myself further, tears coating my face. All I could do is run. I crossed into the main field now and I could see the moonlight shining off the metal gate. My house was just 5 minutes away after that. I have never focused on anything as much as that gate. He was faster than me and getting closer, screaming at me the whole time about how he was going to slit my throat. I ran and ran, pushing myself up and over the gate and ran up the road. I looked as I made the turning for my road. He was still fucking following me. I raced up my driveway and threw myself through the door, running into the living room crying and screaming hysterically, pointing behind me towards the door. My dad ran outside while my mom grabbed a hold of me as I collapsed shaking. As it turns out, my parents had already called the police. As I said, I was going out for an hour at 7 and it was now past 12 a.m. and I hadn't answered when they had called my now broken phone, which was very unlike me. We called the police again to explain. They came and I gave a full statement. Both my parents and the police were horrified. Nothing like this ever happens here. There hasn't been a reported rape or murder in the last 100 years. But one look at me and it was obvious I was telling the truth. I was covered head to toes in cuts and bruises, soaking wet in mud and blood. I won't go into how this experience changed me. It's pretty depressing, but I will say the thing that scares me the most is that they never even had a suspect. Despite him following me so closely, he was gone by the time my dad ran outside. That guy is still out there, and who knows what he is really capable of. This story is told in the perspective of a female. This happened to me back in 2008 when I was 16 years old. I was pretty high at the time, so I could have just been having a bad trip and being paranoid, but I've thought about it a lot and I feel like I just managed to escape a dangerous situation. I had just turned 16, which is kind of a big deal, and instead of being at home celebrating with my friends, I was stuck in a town hundreds of kilometers away from them. It is a beautiful, vibrant town. I just didn't know anyone there, except for Dave. He was 21 years old and he was the only one I did know there, but even then I didn't know him that well. I had met him once when he was visiting my hometown, but I was lonely, and as a 16-year-old, spending your birthday alone is literally the worst thing, so I was desperate to have some fun. Dave invited me to go to an overnight trance festival with him and his friends. At first, my mom was completely against the idea, but Dave agreed to meet up with my family and I pretended to know him a lot better than I actually did. He was a very mild-mannered and charming boy, and this coupled with the fact that my mom felt bad for my 16th birthday being so shitty was enough to convince my mom to let me go. I was extremely excited. It was my first festival and it was with older guys. It was going to be the best birthday ever. The festival was being held in the middle of a wooded area about an hour's drive away from where I was staying with my parents. This is relevant later on in the story. I had never met Dave's friends, but they seemed okay. This one guy made me feel a little uncomfortable. He kept on looking at me like I was food. We'll call him Mike because I don't even remember his name. I wasn't going to let that ruin my evening though. The night started with us smoking some weed, which I was no stranger to, and then they convinced me to snort some MDMA. It was my first time, but like I said, I was no stranger to drugs, so I obliged. We then went to the dance floor and I had an absolute blast. I was way too high to care about anything else but the music and the way it felt to move my body. I started to feel a little overwhelmed being in the thick of it, so I moved off to the side where I could still hear and dance to the music, but be a little bit more chilled. I slowly became aware of a conversation taking place behind me. These people were saying pretty odd things. The first guy says, "See that girl? She's one of my girls. She knows how to treat you right. Just see how well she moves." The second guy says, "Yeah, she does look good." The first man then goes on to describe all the things his girl can do. Some pretty intense sexual things. I was like, man, this girl sounds hardcore. I even looked around to try and spot her, and there were a couple ladies nearby, but I had no idea of knowing which one it was, so I just carried on dancing. After a while, the first man encouraged the other to go and dance with this girl, and she would give him, quote, a taste of what she can do. And to my surprise, this man comes up and tries to start dancing with me. I stopped dead, looked at him, and then turned around to see who was calling me his girl. And there's Mike, standing and leering at me. I'm standing there in shock when Dave rushes over and whispers, "We have to go," and pulls me off the dance floor. I go with him, thinking of him as my savior, and he takes me over to some jungle gyms overlooking the festival. I managed to find a comfortable corner of the jungle gym and was just enjoying the evening air, the fire dancers, and the distant dance floor when I spot Mike fairly close by in an animated conversation with the guy from earlier. The guy finally hands over some money as I was trying to figure out what was going on when Dave and his friends come over to the place I was happily ensconced. They surround me and offer me a line of something. I ask what it is, but they won't tell me, so I decline. There are 4 of them standing very, very close to me, completely trapping me as I have a pole at my back. One of them is shining a torch in my face, and they will just not take no as an answer. They badgered me for what felt like 10 minutes before I finally gave in. As soon as I had taken the line, Dave says we should head to the car. I was already way too suspicious to ever want to go to the car, so I asked if I could just go and dance real quick and then I'd go with them. I ran off to the dance floor, pretending to be excited to get dancing, and pushed my way right into the thick of the crowd. From there, I worked my way to the front and then slipped into the surrounding woods. I hid behind the closest tent and tried to plan out what to do next, when my phone blew up with texts and calls from them asking where I was. I had literally been gone for like 2 minutes. Why were they so worried? I began moving stealthily from one tent to the next, hiding between trees and being extremely paranoid. As I was switching between hiding places, I heard 2 guys approaching, so I dove into some bushes. I had no idea who they were, and I was about to ask them to help me when I heard one describing my exact outfit and description to the other. I was so scared. I had never seen these 2 amongst the group I was with. How did they know who I was and why were they looking for me? I just had no idea what to do. I was scared that if I phoned my mom, I would get into huge trouble, and who knew how long it would take for her to get here. I had no idea who to trust and no plan. I just continued moving through the woods, feeling helpless and terrified when I spotted a campfire. I ran towards it, and when I emerged, there was a group of about 15 very high-looking hippies jamming to some music and having a good time, so I sat with them. They welcomed me warmly and let me sit with them for the remainder of the night. I didn't tell them what was going on. I wasn't sure I even believed it myself. After a few hours, Dave finally found me and tried to get me to leave with him. I refused, so he just sat there until sunrise. I then called my mom to come and get me, as I didn't want to call her at an ungodly hour. I went home and never spoke to Dave again. So that's the night I was saved by some random hippies in the woods. Hey everyone, hope you enjoyed the video. I just wanted to quickly share with you guys some things that are going on in the future. So for one, there's going to be a huge collaboration video with at least 12 other horror-related YouTubers. The collaboration video will be going up on Rob Dyke's channel in the future. I don't know how much else I'm able to talk about, but yeah, that's happening. Make sure you're following me on Twitter for more updates on that and just everything else in general. Also, that new shirt design I was talking about got done. Here's what it looks like. I'll have the link for it in the description along with the artist's information, who you should definitely follow. Anyways, that's it. I hope you liked the video. I made a few slight changes to visuals and tried to choose a different type of music at some parts. If you caught that and enjoyed it more than the usual stuff, please let me know. Stay safe and have an awesome day.